I'm going to talk on Bharati Mukherjee's short story, The Management of Grief. This is continuation to the two previous lectures. As we know, it is a topic in the syllabus for MA Final 4th semester, paper 3, Indian Writing in English. As part of this lecture series, we have already done module 1 and module 2. This is module 3, which is the last one. In this, we will look into the critical analysis and major themes and concerns of the management of grief. In this, we will be talking about major themes, concerns and sentence summary of the management of grief. The present story, The Management of Grief, is narrated in the perspective of Shaila Bhave, a middle-aged Indian woman and an immigrant to Canada. She has recently lost her husband Vikram and her two sons Vinod and Mithun in a plane crash. The short story opens in a state of confusion at Shaila Bhave's Toronto home, and her house is filled with strange gathered together for legal advice and company aid. So the house is filled with her neighbors and fellow mourners. They have just heard about the plane crash. And the story was started with the incident of plane crash, of course, which was suspected that an act of terrorism by Sikh militants. Shaila Bhave tolerates her well-meaning neighbors with her friend and neighbor Kusum. We know Kusum, who has also lost her family members in the plane crash. Shaila Bhave is approached by Judith Templeton, a young Canadian government official who acts as liaison officer and translator for the group of mourners. Templeton wants to assist the group members in getting their affairs in order to moving on with their lives. Bhave and her group then fly to Ireland, where they must identify their remains of their families as the plane crash near the Irish coast. So in this context, Shaila visits the Irish coast where the plane crashed. She went there with Kusum and with Dr. Ranganathan, another mourner who has also lost his entire family in the crash. Each of the mourners has the different personal story. Their hearts were filled with agony, lot of trauma. Despite his loss, very interesting incident is, despite his loss, Dr. Ranganathan maintains an optimistic and a pragmatic attitude. Then the mourners fly from Ireland to India to take up some of their family and old rituals. But Shaila Bhave's wealthy and elderly parents are very progressive and rational, and they do not believe in spirits or in mystical rituals. However, another woman, Kusum, decides to remain in India and to become an ashram devotee. See, this plane crash brought many changes and different changes in many people and the members of the victims of plane crash. Dr. Ranganathan, who is an important character, finds a job in Texas where he plans to tell no one about his personal story and also the plane crash. The story goes like this in a tragic way. Shaila describes her walk on a winter day in Toronto when she heard voices of her family members telling her that her time has come and that she must be brave and she has to start a new life to go with the life. Thus, the short story captures the numerous numbness and the delusional hope of suffering, the terrible pain of loss of loved ones. The story also captures the depression and inability to move on with the life. And when we look at the major themes and concerns of this present short story, the management of grief, we will have three major themes. One is gender roles and a cultural tradition. The second one, collective identity versus personal identity. The third one, assimilation versus multiculturalism. When we look at the first one, gender roles and the cultural tradition, here Shaila and Kusuma are opposing models of behavior. Kusum succumbs to her cultural expectation that she will dedicate her life to her dead, while Shaila struggles with these oppressive cultural demands, of course family rejecting them. Their characters are symbolically represent different perspectives. The second one, collective identity versus personal identity. This is also one of the themes of this short story. The tragedy of flight crash forges a new bond between Indians and Indian Canadians. As Shaila says of the afflicted, we have been melted down and caused a new tribe. Through this short story, Bharati Mukherjee makes it clear that they communicate on the basis of their mutual loss, not on their mutual Indianness. This story also exposes collective identity is substituted for personal identity. Then talks about the third major theme, assimilation versus multiculturalism. Yes, the present short story supports a vision of assimilation. Mukherjee's conception is expressed in the story that is progressive and productive. As the sympathetic protagonist, Shaila Bhave offers is more productive of Indian Canadian living style. She resists falling into the trap of traditions or traditional values like Kusum. At the end, we also see that Shaila Bhave ventures out into a new direction. She walks alone. That denotes she wants to start a new life. Thus, the central theme of all the short stories of Bharati Mukherjee directly or indirectly deal with the American dream and immigration of people, mostly from India and the Middle East. The immigrant characters in all the short stories of Mukherjee go through various steps to assimilate to the Western world. In this world, they have to get adjusted to different social and moral values, especially women. In this connection, the present short story, the management of grief, is also about Indian families living in Canada suffering from grief of loss of their loved ones in a plane crash. And this is a fine management of grief. So that in these three modules, we have discussed the characterization, summary and various themes and concerns of the present short story. Hope the students will get an overall idea on book Bharati Mukherjee's short story, especially on the management of grief. I hope that students will understand and they do better in their academic and competitive examinations. Thank you for watching. I wish you all the best.